Let's take a look. There's a gap here, which needs to be filled. It's approximately 15 centimeters. So, what we're doing in this episode is templating everything. Take measurements and put them into a software called Fusion 360 to design the keel-to-hull transition. If you're new to the channel, let me get you up to speed. Sienna is a Shark 24 I bought for 10 Swiss franc in an online auction. We got her to the yard, I designed a tent for her and built it. Then I stripped her to her bare hull. I started at the bottom adding ballast to the keel by first making a mold and then pouring lead. The goal here is to get her ready and safe to cross any ocean, starting with the Atlantic in 2030. This radical keel project I started with is probably the most ambitious modification I'll do to the boat. The goal is to add stability without compromising the sailing characteristics of the boat too much. Safety is the main priority though. So the first 2 hours I've been here, I've just been fiddling around to get the boat exactly in the same line as the keel and exactly in the same plane as the keel. So everything is exactly aligned, which is kind of important, in the water. And we need to make a connection between the keel and the hull, which has to do a few things. One, it needs to be very strong because the keel is 450 kilograms. So there's a lot of forces playing on the hull. And secondly, it needs to have some kind of foil shape, so it will not create a lot of drag. This probably is the most complicated part of the templating, but if I can get this one done, well, probably the rest will be a breeze. To come up with some kind of plan, I started drawing, just to try and find out how I'd manage to get all this non-straightness into a CAD program. I need some kind of reference here. To get to usable measurements, it is crucial to start seeing the real world in CAD, where there are 3 reference lines for 3 dimensions. X and Y forming the horizontal plane, and the Z-axis standing for the height. Now, since there's nothing to go off from here, I need to create a reference line in the real world. The easiest option in this case is the horizontal longitudinal line, which corresponds to the Y-axis. Since it's easy to do, I'm copying the curve of the keel flange first. First step of many, I think. I'm just winging this. A first reference is there. Now I'll start to connect the template to the hull. Now there's no need to get the complete length of the boat, but I need to have enough of the keel area. My process of templating developed as I went. Marking off a piece, cutting it, gluing it on the template, and so on. It's essential to keep in mind how the template will be used later. Utmost precision isn't necessary here. I just need some base to work off. Here I'm using small wooden sticks to follow the bottom center line of the boat. Just now I actually have a plan. A straight reference line will appear shortly. There it is, the straight horizontal line which will represent the Y-axis in Fusion 360. Now I'm pre-drilling holes in another slat which is to be mounted underneath the first one. Small blocks are being placed at a measured and noted distance to template the hull shape, where this is the end result. My better half and daughter were pleased to see me take the project home. I assured them it was only shortly. After I take the measurements, it will go again. Or it will find a use as a Christmas tree. Anyway, more measurements were taken to get the outline of the keel, to end up with this list, which probably only I understand. Okay, I'll explain. Let's get into Fusion 360, that makes everything a lot easier. I start by creating construction planes along the green y-axis. The distances are the first column in the list. The unit I measured was in centimeter and Fusion thinks in millimeters, so the first plane lands at 290 millimeters from the origin. The next one is placed at 615 millimeters and the next ones are added according to the list. Now I'm placing the central plane. To make things a bit easier to handle, I'm making the planes bigger. As far as I know, this doesn't do much when it comes to function in the program, but it helps me to visualize where I am. Now, I won't bore you with a detailed 3-hour montage of how I'm working in Fusion. For that, there are loads of expert videos on YouTube. I'll just show you some of the steps I took. In Fusion, modeling is typically done starting with so-called sketches, which are mostly being placed on construction planes. I'm starting with the central sketch, which gives me the side view, with the outline of the original keel and the shape of the bottom of the boat. Here I'm creating intersections, which draws dotted construction lines where the planes intersect with the sketch. These lines represent the horizontal reference and the positions on this reference where I took measurements. I'll start with the measurements of the bottom of the hull. I'm placing the dots randomly on the lines so I can give them the measured height afterwards. Note that I had to place some extra lines and dots to cover the recess in the hull where the keel was originally attached. Now that I've got all the points I measured placed in the sketch, it is as simple as connecting them with a so-called spline. The central bottom line of the hull is done. The same technique was applied for the outline of the keel and close sketch and give it a sensible name. Next, I'm creating the longitudinal planes which correspond to these points of measurements on the list. Note that these planes are all offset from the central plane. So the ones on the right side are positive 45, 140 and 220 millimeters, and the one on the left side are the same but negative. I've roughly resized the planes again so they stay accessible. To try and stay organized, I'm naming the construction planes so I can keep track of what is what. After this, I want to create sketches on all the square planes to get the actual shape of the hull. But the dimensions I took and wrote down didn't take the thickness of the bottom slat in account. But Fusion allows to enter equations as dimensions, so let's do that. The keen eyes amongst you might notice something strange. The points on the left and right are not really symmetric. Sure, the way of measuring hasn't been that accurate, but it's still clear the hull is not perfectly symmetric at all. For design purposes, I later evened this out to get a symmetrical hull shape. For me, it is not that important to have the exact shape, since the connection to the hull will have to be built manually anyway. So here I'm connecting the dots using a spline again. When the sketch is finished, it gets its name to keep things nice and organized. The same process is done for the remaining square planes to complete the shape of the keel area of the hull. Now from here on I didn't record the screen anymore, because this would give me hours of footage to work through. But another cool feature of Fusion is that there is a timeline, and you can go back to any step you've taken before. And I'll use this timeline to show you some of the highlights. Here I recreated the process for you, where I'm creating the hull lines on the longitudinal planes. I intersected the lines on the square planes and then connected the dots using a control point spline. This essentially smooths out the lines. Rinse and repeat for the other longitudinal planes to finally get to the first actual surface in the model. This is created using the loft function. A workable hull shape has emerged. To me, this is a rewarding part to see take shape. The next sketch will show the new outline of the keel. And I'll blend in the original keel as well. And it is visible that I will be extending the keel, and I will do this for two reasons. The first reason being that I will have more area where the keel connects to the hull for added strength. And the second reason is it will give the boat a bit more directional stability, which means it will be easier to keep it on the same course. Another sketch I made, which I'll show you here, is the vertical shape I want the new profile of the keel to follow. This profile will come to shortly. After I uploaded my last video, a very kind person of the German Shark 24 Association contacted me, asking me why I was adding ballast to the keel of my Sienna. After I told him about my plans and that I wanted to have some extra security and stability, I asked him if he could point me to typical weaknesses of a Shark 24 on the ocean. He was very helpful in giving me a lot of information on the strengths and weaknesses of a shark as an ocean crossing vessel. He especially pointed out that the shark has the ability to plane on the water, which gives it the ability to reach staggering speeds of up to 13.5 knots, which is why the shark was getting so popular in its time and still is. When it came to weaknesses, there were two main points where one influences the other a lot. The original keel has large flat areas on the left and right side, which create turbulence and swirling air bubbles, which create drag, but more important, they create a lot of stress on the rudder. To mitigate this, the keel should have a proper foil shape, which reduces drag, but more importantly, reduces the stress on the rudder. Here I did a lot of research on the internet, and I landed on goodoldboat.com on an article of Ted Brewer. He tank tested several airfoil shapes on fin keels for similar boat sizes of Sienna, and found that the NACA 001034 would be a solid choice for this type of keel. So I got this airfoil as a base for the new keel profile. This is where I'm at right now. The same person from the German Shark Association told me he wouldn't lower the keel, since apart from the missing foil shape, the original keel has served several ocean crossers well, which makes me consider to lower the keel only slightly to accommodate a solid transition, but trying to keep it as shallow as possible. The added ballast will already have a lot of impact. Let me know what you think.